Happy Artist. Today I want to talk about failure. Failure has been a huge part of my own journey, and I would love for all of us to be able to reframe it from something negative to something positive in our lives. And I'm going to share my own story of how I did this. And by the end of the video, hopefully you will have a positive view of any or all perceived failures, whether they're in the past or even for your future ones, and together we can transform it from being a roadblock into a stepping stone towards your success. Because if we're being honest, success rarely happens without some form of failure. For me, this quote from the children's activist Marion Wright Edelman, I think it sums it up really nicely, that failure is just another way to learn how to do something right. So before I jump in, I'm Lisa and I'm a self-taught artist and entrepreneur, and The Happy Artist is my channel where I will share my art, my inspiration and my journey to launching my own art business just this year. Whether you want to start your own art business or just dabble in anything creative, then this is the place for you. While I'm talking to you today, I'm just going to show you a video of me working on my latest painting, just so you don't get too sick of looking at me. But it's funny actually, because while we're on the topic of failure, when I started this painting, I had the intention of painting a mountainscape. It was not working out, so midway through I decided to get a wet cloth and I rubbed out what I didn't want, and I decided to create a cherry blossom tree instead. In the past I would have been so frustrated that I wasted my canvas and I would have probably stopped painting, but this time I just didn't overthink it or get too upset that the mountains didn't come out. I just kept going and I changed my plan for it. And if this painting did turn out to be an absolute disaster, I'm sure I wouldn't be showing it here. And is it perfect? Nope, far from it. But the beauty about it is that we are in control with what we want to share or not. So just take the pressure off yourself, and as you're creating, just be as free as possible and enjoy the process, because that is what it's all about. Okay, so let's get working on reframing failure. Failure is not the enemy. I really truly believe now that it is all part of the process. And particularly as a creative, if you're not making mistakes, then you have to ask yourself the question, are you moving forward and are you challenging yourself? Maybe you've always thought of failure as falling flat on your face, or creating something absolutely horrible, something that isn't perfect in the way you see it. But even if it is, as I said, who cares? You don't need to share it with anyone. But I guarantee you that you learn something during the process. And every perceived failure will bring so much growth and experience. The word failure, I know, can stir up so many different emotions. I know for myself, embarrassment, humiliation, vulnerability, and maybe you're remembering a time you felt like you had failed. But if you try and reframe that experience, I promise you, you will see the positives and you will use it to just propel yourself forward. So I'm going to share my own story of failure with you. In 2007, I opened up a maternity clothing store in Cork in Ireland. I invested so much time and money into it, and I absolutely loved my business. I loved the shop. I had the most wonderful customers and I had such a fantastic team that I was working with. And if any of my past customers are listening, I would love to hear from you and just thank you for all of your support through the years. While I loved beautiful bumps and this business, it was also an incredibly stressful time because I was juggling the store with 3 children under the age of 5. The recession had just hit, my husband was made redundant, the shop was struggling, and financially we were in a really tough place. So it was an extremely challenging time. And in 2015, I made the heartbreaking decision to close the shop. And at the time, it felt like such a massive failure for me. I owed suppliers money. I didn't know how I would pay off my debts. My confidence was shattered, and I swore I would never work for myself again. I promise that I am clearly breaking right now. The entrepreneurial spirit has come back to life in me, I think. I didn't talk about this whole experience and the business and the feelings I had around my failure for years. I just buried it. I only recently allowed myself to reflect and I just realised what an amazing experience it had been. I mean, I took a risk in my 20s, and for years the business did really well. I had an online store, I won Women in Business Awards, and I managed everything myself, from the purchasing, managing stock levels, design, marketing and staffing. But at the time I couldn't see any of this, and it was only when I took a step back and I allowed myself to reflect on it. And as I step into this new creative journey, I can take all of those experiences and those lessons with me. And that failure was actually such an amazing teacher. So sometimes stepping off one path is just a blessing in disguise, and it will just give you the freedom just to try and find your true calling. Do you know what I find incredibly inspiring is reading reflections from people in their late 80s and 90s. And not once have I ever read anything or heard any of them say, I really regret taking that risk. I really regret chasing my dreams. It's always the opposite. Many of them have reflected on their life and they regret not going after what it is they absolutely loved. And if they could go back in time, they would have chased their dreams without any fear. And I really try and remember their wise words when my own fear creeps in, which it does and it will do. So now let me share 3 very helpful tips that I found very useful to reframe failure. Tip number 1 is talk to yourself like you would talk to a best friend. If a friend of yours came to you saying that they felt like a complete failure or they failed in a certain part of their life, just think about what you'd say to them. I'm sure you'd remind them of everything that they have achieved, their beauty, their creativity, their resilience. So why not give yourself the same grace? Become your own cheerleader and don't wait for others to tell you that you're capable, because you already are. Tip number 2, reframe a past failure in your life. Just take a moment, write down a failure that you have experienced and list 3 reasons why you believe it was in fact a failure. How does it make you feel? What emotions are coming up? And after you've written out, just take a step back and try and reflect on it for 5 minutes. And again, imagine this was your friend's experience. What positives could you point out to them? Did it make you stronger, more resilient? Did you learn what not to do, which is just as valuable as learning what to do? And now could you teach others from your experience? So just be very gentle with yourself during this process, because emotions will come up and it isn't easy, but I promise you it will be so worth it. And I'll provide a downloadable template just below that you can just use as a guide, or you can write in it just to help you work through this exercise. I found it extremely helpful, and I just hope that it can help you too. And tip number 3, ask yourself, what would you do if fear and failure were not holding you back? So if failure wasn't an obstacle in your life, what would you absolutely love to do? What is the dream that you've been putting off? And write it down. You can use the same template. I'll have a section there to write this as well, and just to brainstorm your goals and your vision for the future. Because the truth is, you cannot hide from failure, just like you can't hide from fear. But by embracing them, you empower yourself to succeed and inspire others to do the same. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and comment and subscribe if you'd like to hear more. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's one failure you're now seeing maybe in a different light. And let's inspire each other to look at things a little differently. Maybe you want to share this with a friend if you think it might help them as well. But I just want you to know that I am rooting for you. And as ever, let's dream big together, create passionately, and empower each other along the way. Thanks so much for being here, and see you in the next video.